Hello, it's Mr. Mabry, and we are going to learn about the nature of stem cells. What I'm going to do is take you through a tutorial that the University of Arkansas, the Genetic Science Learning Center there, put forward on a quick overview of stem cells. And I'm going to mute their audio and sort of talk over their slides, but you can always visit their site to get their narration of the following slides. So, if you could title your paper, The Nature of Stem Cells, and you can let your paper mimic my notepad over here. All right, Congress students, here we go.
Our bodies contain
So
specialized.
here are these specialized cells in our body. These are nerve cells, skin cells, muscle cells. Those look like red blood cells to me, and these are in contrast to something called stem cells. Okay, stem cells, we're going to write down some vocab words real quick. So we have differentiated cells, and these are going to be in contrast to stem cells. Now, differentiated cells follow the root of the word different. In other words, they're called differentiated because they're cells that are already specialized. They have a role. The job of the neuron is to conduct neural impulses. The job of your skin cells is for protection and to move things in and out of your skin. Obviously, this cell has these long antennas for conducting electricity, or these myofibrils in the muscle fiber are useful for contracting. This cell would be horrible at conducting electricity. It is different or differentiated from these other cells type. In contrast, stem cells are not specialized. They have the potential to assume any role in the body. And so stem cells, whether from an embryo or from an adult, are not differentiated yet and could eventually become any of these cell types. So here we see an embryonic stem cell, and we can see as it's developing into a human, eventually embryos become us. Ta-da! So how does it come that way? Well, along comes a happy little sperm. And then when a sperm meets an egg it loves very dearly, it turns into an embryo. Ta-da! And as that embryo starts to divide, it starts becoming a baby, which means these little embryonic stem cells are going to start to differentiate and assume certain jobs as the embryo becomes a fetus. Whoa, and electricity happens. Not really. So here you see it dividing, and you see the embryo starting to become what's known as a blastocyst. This term is not important for us, but you should just know that the outside here is the placenta that's going to be feeding the baby, and the inside here, the inner cell mass, is what is becoming a baby. And already these cells are becoming specialized. And so as the 9 months go along, we now know some really cool things about the inner cell mass, that different layers of the inner cell mass, we know that these layers become different parts of the baby, and that, this top layer is going to become a certain part, and there the bottom layer becomes the brain and spinal cord, so on and so forth. We're going to gloss over this because I'm not very impressed by it. And here we show that as the embryo is becoming the baby, once you turn into a nerve cell or a muscle cell, that's it. You are differentiated. There's no going back to becoming a stem cell. And so that's the second thing we're going to write down, is sort of following this process of what happens to stem cells as we develop inside our mom. So the first magical thing that we saw happening was sperm plus egg equals an embryo. An embryon. Okay, so that's yay, and we'll write down magic. That's that magic moment your parents never talk to you about because it's awkward. And then we have embryonic stem cells beginning to divide and differentiate. This happens over 9 months. And then all of a sudden, there you are, and you are now a baby. Ta-da! And the thing that they're showing here with this slide is that even after you become an adult, though, there are actually stem cells inside you. And so as an adult, you have something called a somatic stem cells. And these are used for growth and repair. We're going to write down a couple examples because I know you might think, weird, I thought stem cells were only in embryos. So for example, in your bones, you've heard of bone marrow, and that's used to replace your blood as it expires. Another example would be in your bone tissue, and that's for you to grow or to repair, a broken bone. Same with your muscle, to build muscle, so on and so forth. So I hope this introduction was helpful to help you understand the general difference between differentiated cells and stem cells, and for you to realize that as you develop and as your cells begin to get their jobs, you still have in your body these little pockets, though, of stem cells. Now, they can only become limited cell types. Like, for instance, bone marrow cells can only become blood cells. They can't become brain or toenails or liver. But you do have these little pockets of stem cells. Now that you know these general terms, we're going to get into more specific examples of stem cells and talk about why the use of stem cells is both really exciting and controversial. So stay tuned.